I didn't realize I was repeating the same mistake until someone pointed it out, and even then, I almost ignored it. It happened in a moment that felt too small to matter. A simple conversation. A simple choice. But something about it stayed with me longer than it should have. And that was the first sign that something deeper was running the show. I used to think I was a pretty self-aware person. I had a normal routine. Wake up early, scroll my phone for a few minutes, grab coffee, head to work. I worked in a quiet office, nothing too stressful, nothing too exciting either. Most of my days followed the same predictable rhythm. And honestly, I liked it that way. There was comfort in knowing what to expect. In believing I was making conscious, rational decisions about my life. Who I talked to, what I worked on, what I avoided, it all felt intentional. At least, that's what I told myself. I remember thinking once, I know why I do things. It felt reassuring. Like I was in control. But control is a strange thing. You don't question it, until something doesn't add up. It started with small things. I'd hesitate before sending a message, even when I knew exactly what I wanted to say. I'd avoid certain conversations without a clear reason. Sometimes, I'd feel this quiet resistance, like an invisible push, stopping me from doing something simple. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone hesitates. Everyone overthinks sometimes. But then it started showing up more often. There was this one coworker, Daniel. He was friendly, easy to talk to. We worked on similar projects, so naturally, we interacted a lot. One afternoon, he asked if I wanted to join him and a few others for lunch. It was a normal question. Nothing complicated. But I felt that same resistance. I remember thinking, I should go. There's no reason not to. And then, almost automatically, I said, I've got some work to finish. Maybe next time. Even as I said it, something felt off. I didn't actually have urgent work. I wasn't busy. And I didn't dislike them. So why did I say no? I didn't have an answer. Just a vague feeling that it was easier not to go. That moment should have passed like any other. But it didn't. Later that day, Daniel came back from lunch laughing, talking about something that had happened. It sounded like they'd had a good time. Nothing extraordinary, but enough to make me feel like I'd missed something. Not the lunch itself. Just the experience of being there. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at my screen, thinking, why do I keep doing that? Because it wasn't the first time. I'd turned down invitations before. Avoided conversations. Chosen the safer, more predictable option, even when part of me wanted something different. It was subtle. Easy to ignore. But it was consistent. And that's what made it uncomfortable. A few days later, I mentioned it to a friend. We were sitting in a quiet cafe, nothing unusual. I casually brought it up, expecting a simple explanation. Maybe stress. Maybe introversion. She listened, nodded, and then said something that caught me off guard. Do you ever feel like you've already decided before you think you're deciding? I didn't answer right away. Because the question didn't make sense at first. But then I thought about it. And something clicked. That night, I started paying attention. Not just to what I did, but to what happened right before I did it. The next time I had to make a small decision, I paused. It was something simple. Replying to a message. I noticed the thought come in, I'll respond later. But right behind it, there was something else. A feeling. Subtle. Quick. Almost invisible. It wasn't a clear sentence. It was more like a quiet discomfort. A slight tension. And it came before the thought. That's when I realized something strange. I wasn't deciding first and then feeling something. I was feeling something, and then justifying it with a decision. That realization stayed with me. Over the next few days, I kept observing. Every time I hesitated, avoided something, or chose the easier path, I looked for that initial feeling. And it was always there. Sometimes it felt like doubt. Sometimes like fear. Sometimes just a vague unease I couldn't explain. But it always came first. And the decision came after. I remember thinking, what if I'm not actually in control of these choices? It sounded extreme. But the pattern was hard to ignore. The real turning point came a week later. Daniel asked again if I wanted to join them for lunch. Same situation. Same tone. And almost immediately, that familiar feeling showed up. That quiet resistance. For a second, everything felt automatic again. I could almost hear myself about to say no. But this time, I stopped. Not because I suddenly felt confident or excited. But because I noticed the process happening in real time. The feeling. The hesitation. The automatic response forming. And for the first time, I questioned it. Where is this coming from? There was no clear answer. No logical reason. Just that same old discomfort. And in that moment, I made a different kind of decision. Not based on the feeling. But in spite of it. I said yes. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No sudden confidence. No big emotional shift. Just a quiet, slightly uncomfortable, yeah, I'll come. But internally, it felt different. Like I had interrupted something. Lunch was normal. We talked about random things. Work, weekend plans, small jokes. Nothing life-changing happened. But something subtle shifted. I realized the experience itself wasn't the point. The point was that the resistance I felt earlier hadn't been accurate. It hadn't predicted anything real. It was just there. And I had been treating it like truth. After that, I started experimenting. Small things at first. If I felt that hesitation before speaking up, I'd pause and question it. If I wanted to avoid something, I'd ask myself why. Not aggressively. Just curiously. And what I found was uncomfortable. Most of my decisions weren't really decisions. They were patterns. Automatic responses shaped by something deeper, something I wasn't fully aware of. Memories, past experiences, old assumptions. Things I hadn't consciously chosen, but were still influencing me. There was one moment that made it very clear. I was about to share an idea in a meeting. It wasn't a big deal, just a small suggestion. But right before I spoke, that same feeling hit. Doubt. A quiet voice saying, "It's probably not worth saying." And for a second, I almost stayed silent. Like I always did. But then I caught it again. That same pattern. And I thought, this isn't new. This is familiar. So I spoke anyway. Not confidently. Not perfectly. Just, honestly. And nothing bad happened. No judgment. No awkward silence. The conversation moved on like normal. But internally, something shifted again. I realized that the fear I felt wasn't coming from the present moment. It was coming from somewhere older. Something my mind had learned a long time ago, and never questioned. That's when it finally made sense. The subconscious isn't trying to control you in a dramatic way. It's doing it quietly. Through patterns. Through feelings that show up before your thoughts. Through assumptions you don't even realize you're making. And the dangerous part is, it feels like you. It feels like your own decision. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I started noticing it everywhere. In the way I interpreted people's words. In the way I reacted to situations. In the stories I told myself about what things meant. And slowly, I realized something uncomfortable. I hadn't been responding to reality. I had been responding to my perception of it. And that perception wasn't always accurate. The shift didn't happen overnight. I didn't suddenly become fearless or completely self-aware. But I started creating space. A small gap between feeling and action. Between reaction and decision. And in that space, I had a choice. Not always an easy one. But a real one. Sometimes, I still choose the familiar path. The safe response. The comfortable pattern. But now, I know when I'm doing it. And that awareness changes everything. Because it turns something automatic into something intentional. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Your subconscious isn't your enemy. It's just efficient. It uses past experiences to make quick decisions. To protect you. To keep things predictable. But it doesn't always update itself. It keeps running old patterns, even when they no longer make sense. And unless you notice them, they keep running. I still think about that question my friend asked. Do you ever feel like you've already decided before you think you're deciding? Now, the answer feels obvious. Yes. Most of the time. But now, I also know something else. That first feeling isn't the final decision. It's just the beginning of one. And maybe that's the real shift. Not trying to control every thought or feeling. But simply noticing them. Questioning them. Giving yourself a moment before you follow them. Because the truth is, you might not be fully in control of what shows up in your mind. But you do have a say in what you do next. And sometimes, that small pause is enough to take everything back.